Hey, what's up YouTube? Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your cooling fan assembly on a 2007 Honda Accord. Now this radiator is a Denso radiator. Honda made two different radiators, or used two different radiators during these years of production. This is an 07. This should be the same process for the 2003 to 2007, but if you have a different radiator or a radiator made by Vallejo, which is the other brand that they used, that does take a different fan. So just know that it's almost identical or the same process, but the Vallejo fan will not line up with the Denso version. Now, if you're running hot or have a fan that's not turning on, it's a very simple test. You can just turn on the air conditioning and both fans should be on. If only one is on, the simplest way to test that, I just grabbed a voltmeter here, just set it to 20 volts, and then disconnect the wire that powers the fan. This actually just pulled out of this little plastic sleeve right there, but this is the power source for that fan. And so we just need to put our leads in there and turn on the air conditioning. On the fan assembly, it's got one red wire and one black wire, so I'm guessing that this is positive, that's negative, but let's go turn on the air conditioning real quick. All right, you can see we have plenty of power here. Pull that out real quick. So I reconnected that, and this fan's not moving at all. The other side is, but this one is just completely still. So we know that our fan is bad. Now, if you don't have power to that wire there, you do need to further troubleshoot that or go back and you can double check or test a relay. If you do have power there, it's just a bad motor. Because it's cheaper and simpler just to replace the entire assembly, that's what we're gonna do. You don't necessarily have to disconnect the battery ground, but just as a safety precaution, in case I need to walk away in the middle of this job, I don't want anyone to start this vehicle, because I'm going to have everything taken apart, and I'm going to drain some of the coolant. Now, you don't need to drain all of your coolant, just enough so that you don't make a big mess here in the top of the radiator, because you do need to disconnect this upper radiator hose. In my case though, it's time for a flush, or it's time to swap that coolant, so I'm just going to go ahead and drain the radiator completely. Now this is actually easy enough to reach from the top. Right down there, see that little opening of that window? Where you see red is just the color of my drain pan, and then that is the drain right here. Just twist that counterclockwise. If someone has put it on there really tight, you may need some little pliers, but there you go. So we'll just let that drain down. You can crack the radiator cap. That'll make it drain a little bit faster. All right, now I'm just gonna squeeze this clamp and pull that back a little bit so we can get that hose off. And then just loosen the upper radiator hose. Hopefully we've drained enough out that this won't spill too much. There we go. And I'm just going to put this up over here between the intake and this positive battery cable. That holds that up and out of the way. We also need to take off this hose right here, the overflow hose. Right here is fairly simple to disconnect. Just push in and pull that out. Now this is the one that is usually mounted right here into the fan. It just kind of popped out of the plastic housing there. But this right here is our wiring harness is clipped in right here, and we will need to undo that. Now same thing on this side. We can just disconnect this other side fan by pressing that little tab and pulling that out. That harness is also plugged into the body of the fan with just little plastic clips. Once we lean the fan forward, we'll be able to get to those. Okay, so down here on the passenger side, this right here, this is just another piece of the wiring harness. It's got this little wire that goes into the air conditioning compressor, and then right here you just push on the back of that will slide off of that little metal tab like that. This little metal tab is not on the new fan assembly, so we will need to unscrew this and screw that back on to the new one when we get it out. I'm also going to take off this little plastic piece. This is going to allow us to lean this fan shroud forward in order to release those little plastic clips without breaking them. It just has these two little plastic tabs right there. I don't know if those will just pop out. There they go. I'm just using this little body pry tool. That worked fine. I do have a bunch of universal plastic fasteners like this. They do come in handy on stuff like this. I'll get a link to those in the description, but luckily these didn't break, so we'll hang on to those. Now once you get these two little snaps off for the top of this plastic piece, you can just pull it up. This is actually just a slot. You see if you pull that straight up, it just comes out, and just wiggle that out of the way. And this is just, like I said, it's just a little plastic cover. It covers the little intake opening there. Now we can loosen and remove these three 10mm bolts that hold the shroud to the radiator. All right, now the entire shroud is loose at the top, but it's still in those three little tabs or little prongs that go in at the bottom. It's just kind of lift and wiggle that. It'll come out. There we go. But remember, we're still connected to all of the wiring harnesses. All right, now that we have that open a little bit, I'm going to try to show you each of the clips. So there's one right there. See that little clip? We just need to squeeze that in. Another one right down there. Even a third one. So there's 3 on that side, and then just the one over here on this side. Some needle nose pliers work fine just to get in there and just kind of squeeze those. See, it just pops right out. As soon as you squeeze it and you get it at the right angle, it'll just come right out. Another one right there. You see, I'm just using needle nose pliers just to kind of pinch that. And as soon as it's lined up, it'll just pop right out like that. All right, this last one at the bottom, probably the hardest to get to. You can kind of get your arm in between the radiator and the fan assembly here, and I'm just trying to squeeze that just enough to get it lined up with that hole, and hopefully it'll just pop right out. There it goes. See that one right there? That's it. Now there's some coolant still in the overflow, but that's all right. You should be able just to pull it straight out. Just make sure you're clear of everything and just pull it up and out. All right, so here's our old fan assembly and the new fan assembly. And what I mentioned is this right here. It's just a screw that holds this clip in place. You can see that it's not on the new one. And you want to make sure you do this before you put this in the vehicle. This will be a lot harder to get to. Some people like to keep the old reservoir. If you want to do that, this is a 10 millimeter here. Looks like a 7 millimeter. So if you do want to transfer that, you can. I'm just going to go with the new one since it's already on there. All right, so that new assembly is ready to go in the vehicle now. I'll just carefully lower that into place. There it is. You can see that lines up perfectly. I'm going to put the 10 millimeter bolts back in place that hold the assembly to the radiator. Here, just make these snug. Don't overdo them. All right, and then our connector right here, just push that in until you hear it click like that. And then just push each of these connectors in. You can kind of just go by feel and follow the wire down. Just, they snap right into place. The bottom one, there it is. And then this connector on this side, just push that in until it clicks. Here, this clips into place through that hole, like that. This right here, just line that up and it slides right onto that metal tab, like that. All right, and then we can put the upper radiator hose back on. And then we can get that clamp back in place. There we go. All right, and then remember this little plastic cover just slides back down in place here. You kind of have to get that started on this little grommet there. And then we just need to put these 2 little snaps in that hold this cover. They just push in and then press that snap. Same with this one here. Just push that in to get started and then snap it in place. All right, and then we need to tighten that drain plug at the bottom of the radiator. Now, if you only drain down the radiator a little bit in order to change this and take off this hose without making a mess, then you can just top it off and you're good to go. I'm using this SuperTech. It's pretty cheap stuff, but it says it's good for Honda. It's the blue stuff. In my case, since I drained the radiator completely, I'm going to fill this up and then let it run, and I'm going to leave this funnel in here, and that's going to help me bleed out any of the air. By the way, if you don't have a funnel like this, the spill-proof version, you can even put the plug in and take it out if you have excess, or use that in the overflow. I recommend you pick up one of these. I'll get a link to these in the description, but I really like it. Again, you don't have to worry so much about overdoing it or putting in too much, because you can just plug this, pull it out, put it in the overflow, or put it back in the jug if you poured too much. Usually I'll just squeeze on the radiator hoses a few times, upper and the lower, just to try to get any of those bubbles out. All right, we've got most of that out. One more thing I didn't mention, but the little rubber hose that came off the old one, it goes on for your overflow. There we go. All right, and then we need to reconnect the battery. All right, feels like we've got most of the air out of these lines here. I'm still gonna leave this funnel in while we start it. There's still some coolant in here and it may take a little bit more. And you're done. Quick and easy, simple repair. Hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. I'm happy with this replacement assembly. Everything seems to be working just fine. I'll update the video if I have any issues. I'm probably gonna run this a little bit longer just to make sure I have all of the air out of the system, but then I'll just take this coolant and drop it down into the overflow here. To change out just the one bad fan motor, you still have to take out the entire assembly, and the cost of that motor was really not much different than the entire fan assembly here, so I thought, why not just grab the whole thing and throw it in. Now I'll get a link in the description to this fan assembly along with the Vallejo fan assembly. Again, make sure that your radiator says Denso if you're doing this fan, or Vallejo if you're gonna do the other one. There's a lot of reviews on Amazon where people, you can tell that they've bought the wrong fan. Their tabs didn't line up. They had to zip tie things together instead just to get it working. Just make sure you order the right one. I'll get a link in the description to some of the tools and the other parts I used in the video as well. Thanks so much for watching and good luck.